Good morning, Rabotai. Welcome to Breakfast in the Class. There's a beautiful idea that I'd just like to share with you today on our parasha. It says, "Vayikach Korach ben Yitzhak ben Kahat ben Levi." And I remember reading something really beautiful that talks about how Korach himself was ashir, he was wealthy. We know that Korach was a tremendous Talmid Chacham. What else do we know about Korach? We also know that Korach was a Navi, he was a prophet. How do we know that Korach was a Navi? Because the Gemara quotes, and Rashi brings it down, this guy who was so pikeach, Korach shepikeach haya. Ma ra'ay know that. What made him make this huge mistake? And the Gemara answers that the mistake that he made came from the fact that he was able to see that he was going to give birth to a person whose name was Shemuel, and Shemuel was going to be as great as Moshe Rabbeinu. How do we know that Shemuel was as great as Moshe Rabbeinu? Because we say in Tehillim, Moshe ve'Aharon v'Kohanav u'Shmuel v'Korei Shemo. So you see that we are equating Moshe and Aharon with Shemuel. So if that's the case, Korach said to himself, how can it be that I'm wrong in this question, in this machloket, if I'm being blessed with someone that is equivalent to Moshe Rabbeinu? According to some opinions, it's not that Korach saw Shemuel specifically, but he saw that coming from him was a greatness that was equal to Moshe. He didn't understand it was a grandson of his. He may have thought that actually was coming from him. But I read from Rav Chaim Kanievsky, he writes that actually, if Korach would have played his cards right, maybe he would have received it. He actually deserved to be able to be a leader. He had all the prerequisites that Rambam talks about, that for a person to be that kind of a leader. So why wasn't he a leader? And in fact, the Torah opens with the definition of Korach's downfall. Vayikach Korach. The reason and the problem that Korach faced was simply the fact, Vayikach, that he tried to take it. We find this exact idea by Adoniyahu, King David HaMelech's son, who was worthy to be able to take over his position. But he decided he wanted to take it for himself, and in taking that position, what happened? Hashem says, you want to take it, you're not going to get it. Look at, by contrast, Moshe Rabbeinu. God is trying to give Moshe Rabbeinu leadership, but what's Moshe's response? Time after time after time. He doesn't want to take it. He begs God to have to choose somebody else. Shelach na biyad tishlach. So when a person tries to take something that is not for them, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't give it to them. But the chidush we're learning today is that sometimes when we try and proactively take something, even if it's for us, it's just not for us yet. Not only do we not get the item earlier, we lose it completely. My friends, I want to share with you one last piece from Rav Chaim that I thought was very beautiful. There are 4 different people who open up with the word af. We find that the Nachash says, af also, even. Did God not want you to eat from the tree? Why? Because he doesn't want you to be gods like him. Who else do we find uses the expression, opens the sentence with the word af? The ofeh, the baker, who wants his place back. Even Paro did not. Af. Who else do we find with this concept, with the opening up with the word af, which means literally, which means anger? Where else do we find that? We find it by Esther. Esther HaMalkah says, af lo, even did not the king call me for this amount of time, and if I just wait, it's going to be okay, everything will be fine. And finally, the last one that we have is, Haman, af lo karula, Mechila. Haman says, even did not the queen call to this party other than me and the king. And finally, who is our last? We have over here in the story of Korach. Korach's situation, they said, even did you not bring us to the story, to the land of milk and honey. Every time, says the Telas Chazal, that when they opened up the expression with the word af, what happened? It resulted, if it began with anger, it ended with anger. Says Rav Chaim Kanievsky, if you take a look at these 4 cases, those 4 cases spell the word kinah. Wild. Korach, Nachash, what's it called? Opheh, and Haman. The jealousy that these people felt, each one. The baker felt the jealousy of the fact that the other one was going to be restored to his post. The The Korach, people in Korach, we know the story. They wanted leadership for themselves. Haman is jealous. Who's he jealous of? Ironically, he's jealous of Mordechai, even though he has everything. There's something that Mordechai has that he doesn't have, and that's the power to be able to deny even the king's directive. And finally, the experience of the Nachash as well. Our Chachamim tell us that Nachash was jealous of the relationship that Adam had with Chava, and he wanted Chava for himself. My friends, listen to this because this is remarkable. Says Reb Chaim Kanievsky, it spells the word Kinah, but it also spells the word Ne'aka. Now, Reb Chaim explains it according to the way that he wants to say it. But I would like maybe perhaps to add a little bit of a twist on this. The word Ne'aka, where do we find it? That word Ne'aka. Na'akatam means their cries, their screams. So oftentimes, right, when we think of Kin'ah, we think of a terrible midah, that someone is jealous of somebody else. And therefore, what does that result in? It results in what we said earlier, Vayikach Korach, that Kin'ah causes the person to try and grab, to try and take something that belongs to somebody else. But I want you to understand this on a deeper level. Na'aka means a cry that emanates from deep in your soul. When a person is jealous of somebody else, it's not just a bad midah. It's that there's something inside of them that is crying out, whether it's for recognition, whether it's crying out for kavod. The person at that point is no longer in the capability of making their own decisions. In fact, fascinating, Rambam talks about when it says lo tachmod, that a person should not be jealous in Aseret Dibrot. One of the conditions for lo tachmod is not that you're jealous of the person, but you're jealous of the person to the point where you try and take it, or you offer him any money for his car or his house or his whatever, it doesn't matter. Now the question is, the Torah says don't be jealous. Why is Rambam including in the prohibition the idea that you actually went out and got it? And the answer the Chachamim give is that when we're describing Kinah, it's not like you look at the guy's car and you say, oh, nice ride, nice suit. It's not an observation. It's something which is bothering you so much that if you don't act on it, then that tells us that what you were experiencing was not true Kinah. Kin'ah is a jealousy that's so deep that it causes the person to actually make a move. Now that sounds a little bit odd, but maybe let's change it up from looking at a person's car. What happens, as an example, when someone's passed over in a business for a promotion? All of a sudden, the guy starts circulating, talking to people. Do you really think he's the guy? I don't know. I remember when he messed up the deal with this or with that. What is he doing? His kinah is driving him to a maaseh. Okay? Do you hear that? So you can find many examples of this. Someone else closes a sale. What do? You go and do everything you can to go and badmouth the guy to the buyer or to the seller in order that he gets pushed aside so you're back in. Kinah always has to have a maaseh. But what's fascinating is in halakha that kinah is considered an action that does not have an averah, a sin that does not have an action. You could only ever get malkut, lashes, in the time of the Beit HaMikdash for a lav sheyesh bo maaseh. But this lav, Rambam says it has to result in an action, and still he calls it a lav she'en bo maaseh, if I'm not mistaken. So if I'm not mistaken, again, mechilav, forgive me if I'm getting it wrong, but if I'm not mistaken, the Mefarshim are explaining a powerful idea. There's something called a siman, and there's something called a siva. What's the difference between those two things? In this instance, it's not that jealousy requires an action in order for it to be a sin, but rather, when there's an action that accompanies it, it tells you that the person did that sin. So as an example, when I love someone, does love require an action, or is it just a feeling? You'd imagine love is just a feeling. That's true. But if you say you love someone, and you see them drowning and you don't save them. Or you see someone drowning and you jump in and you do save them. That action illustrates that there is a feeling. And the lack of action also illustrates that there's a lack of feeling. So it's not that the lav is yesh po ma'aseh, but rather that without the ma'aseh, we have not established that this is actually the feeling. What an interesting idea. But my friends, the same way that our bad midot can animate us and can motivate us into action, that is also true about our positive midot. You tell people, say all the time, I feel so bad for this person. If you really felt bad for them, what would you do? This guy, he's so close to me. If he's as close as you say, how are you not helping him get a job? How are you not helping him get married? Oh, me and him, we're best friends. It doesn't seem from your actions that you're acting as a best friend would. So maybe perhaps we can not only seek to be able to do better mitzvot, more powerful mitzvot, in terms of the way we think and the way that we feel, but actually to have those things manifest in the world around us. What does it look like when a person has faith in their head? That's called emunah. What does it look like when a person acts in their life based on that faith? That's not emunah, that's bitachon. So emunah is saying Hashem will provide. Emunah is saying everything Hashem does is for the best. And maybe even convincing yourself that you believe it. But when something happens and you turn into an animal, that number one is an illustration that you have no bitachon. But also, perhaps at that point, when your actions are screaming so much louder than your words, maybe that's a revelation that there's something missing on the thought and on the feeling process as well. Because if that was there properly, wouldn't it result in an action that was purer, that was more refined? Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.